Okay, I am having a chat with pianist, composer, educator Jeffrey Jacob. We're going to be discussing his 2017 CD release on Navona Records. It's called Awakening. It's a wonderful, evocative title. And the CD include, and by the way, these are works that were recorded something between about 2014 and 2016, if I recall, on this CD. Something in
Yeah.
that, so really fairly recent. Um, we, including Awakening for piano and orchestra. We'll discuss that. Two tone poems, wonderful tone poems for orchestra. Two chamber orchestra works, a sonata for cello and piano, and three solo piano works. And Jeff Jacob is the pianist throughout. So that's going to be fun to talk about. Piano soloist throughout the CD. The orchestras include, this is wonderful. I was in Cuba a couple summers ago. The National Symphony of Cuba, playing very well on this recording from one of the
Yes.
big orchestral works. The Capitol Philharmonic of New Jersey, Philadelphia Virtuosi Chamber Orchestra, cellist, we don't want to forget cellist Laura Turner, who plays the cello sonata with you. Um, have I missed anybody? I think that's it. And as I said, the CD, the pieces on the CD were recorded roughly between 2014 and 2016. And here's what you have to say about it. And I always am fascinated about, and let's talk about, let's start there so you can get some, so I can shut up and you can talk a little bit. Let's talk about, I'm always fascinated about the organization of a CD. It's such a big effort. It costs money. It's a love, blood, sweat, tears, and divorce kind of a situation. It takes years to reach fruition. So organizing the program on that CD is very important for everybody that puts out a CD. And you have said, I hope I'm quoting you fairly accurately, the CD is cyclical in its organization and of the works. That's my addition. And it's reflecting the fundamental cycle of birth, development, maturity, death, and rebirth. Pretty standard thing, but it's fascinating how you approach with these particular works that cyclical idea. Just a quick one. I'm going to let everybody know who Jeffrey Jacob is. Uh, by the way, you have a huge portfolio of works, four symphonies. All of them have been performed with major orchestras around the world. Two piano concertos, uh, choral music, chamber and solo works. I mean, it's a big portfolio. Um, all of this, as I mentioned, has been performed by major orchestras. You have a master's degree from Juilliard, and you also are quite a good pianist. I wish I had known this. You have recorded the complete piano music of Samuel Barber. I wonder if I even have that, maybe. Who knows? I do have a complete works of Samuel Barber piano work and the piano works of George Crumb. So we're not fooling around here. You have an affinity for contemporary music. Let's start there. Give me a little idea of, it's a little corny, but what I'm always curious as a musician myself. I kind of know when the bug hit me. When did the bug hit you? And we're talking about, I guess, the piano bug, and then later, when did you say, "Hey, I think I'm a composer"?
Well, very interesting question. Something I've thought much about in my life. My training was as a pianist. So my degrees, bachelor's and master's and doctorate, they were all in piano performance, and my teachers were all the music that I studied. It was all standard repertoire. So in fact, I, my bachelor's degree, University of Cincinnati, my master's at Juilliard, my two teachers there absolutely hated contemporary music. My teacher at Juilliard, I wanted to do Bartok improvisations. It was a wonderful
Wonderful piece.
work for piano, Bartok. He said, "Absolutely not. It's not music. It's not music. It's banging on the instrument. It's not music." And he said, "You will not study that with me." And then when for my doctorate,
By the way, excuse me for interrupting, but you know what that means. He can't play it. I'll bet, or couldn't.
Probably,
She
probably,
couldn't play it, maybe. Excuse me for interrupting. So there you
yeah,
are. You're at Juilliard. We're talking Bartok, one of the great
yeah,
geniuses of the 20th century, and your professor at Juilliard said, "Nah, no, 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 junk, garbage, noise." Boy, those were the
yeah.
days.
Yes, and so then my doctorate at Peabody, I studied with Leon Fleischer, and Fleischer is interested in contemporary music, but he is his specialty throughout his career was a classical romantic repertoire, and so I thought, well, I would study that with him, and so I didn't get into contemporary music until I got a job, and on the faculty of St. Mary's College, associated with University of Notre Dame in Indiana. And the composer on the faculty said to me sternly, "You need to be playing contemporary music. Schumann and Chopin and Beethoven are great, but you need to be playing contemporary music." And what he meant was, of course, you need to be playing my music. And so, but I did. So I did, and I gradually got into contemporary music. I was always interested in contemporary music because I was always interested in composing. Although I would improvise a lot, but I never got down to finishing a work until I was in my early 30s, and I said, okay, I gotta write some stuff here.
That's when we all start to get serious. I have a feeling when I was in my mid 30s, I suddenly realized all the mistakes I had made earlier,
Uh,
and began to mend my technique, if you will, my thing about my career in conducting. Excuse me
uh,
once again for interrupting. I couldn't resist that. Go ahead.
well, the same for me, and I then um, began performing music by living composers, and it was very, very rewarding. Of course, it's it can be scary because nobody knows the score like the composer, and you're playing for the composer, and you're trying to play it exactly the way the composer intended it to be performed, and the composer is in the audience. So Beethoven is not going to show up to any of your concerts, but you play music by living composers. But composers are generally very, very, very nice people. I've had great experiences working with composers, and
The checks in the mail for that one. Go ahead.
yes, yes, but the insights you gain in as far as interpreting music of all periods when you work with living composers, and they talk about their music. I play. I've always told my students this. I play the standard repertoire differently and better, uh, having the experience working with composers.
Very well
So
put.
then gradually I got uh, uh, into composing myself, and first works were solo piano works, and then I attempted more ambitious works with ensembles, and eventually to orchestral works, piano concertos and symphonies.
Let me just jump in to explain to everybody that uh, Jeff is actually holding his iPhone through this interview, which is a struggle. So once in a while, if things seem to shake, no, there are no earthquakes taking place. You're on the East Coast, right?
No, no, no.
Oh,
I'm just up the road from you. I'm in Sacramento.
oh, so sorry. I don't know why I got
Uh,
that you were on the East Coast. I guess because I make so many, talk to so many people on the East Coast. Ah, well then, we're we could very
it,
well experience an earthquake. But in any
it,
case,
it could very well be earthquakes. I'm not sure whether it's earthquakes or me, but
so just to kind of assure everyone, this is a tough job to hold an iPhone through an entire interview. So kudos and bravo to Jeff Jacob for your sacrifice in the name of the arts. Um, so I guess what I've just finished hearing is something about you go through college and all the discipline and Juilliard and all those great Peabody and so on, and they all kind of shall we say, are not encouraging. You get out, you get a job, you get a paycheck, and all of a sudden the world is yours. You're free.
yes, yes, yes. That's right.
So you came to composition, as in serious composition, in your mid 30s, something like that. Yeah.
Yes, right, right.
This is a good idea because you'll of course have had all the training You know what I mean? In music, so you don't, I presume, would not be making the sort of errors of a beginning composer. You know the craft, I would think. Am I
Well,
crazy there or not?
I feel like that's true. I feel like that's true. I hope that's true in my music. With all of the experience that I've had um, playing contemporary music and working with living composers, uh, trying to understand their thought processes, their compositional processes, and that's informed my own composition enormously.
You know, and as we know, or I've certainly experienced, I'm sure you have as well, with contemporary music, you're go as you kind of hinted, you're going in cold turkey. Nobody, no, there's no recording to refer to,
Yeah,
but also you can play a piece several times and then finally hit on whatever it is that makes it somehow work exactly right.
yeah.
I've heard several pianists play a wonderful piece that I love by a composer friend of mine, a piano piece. One of those persons out of that to maybe seven or eight that have recorded that particular piano piece got it. And all of a sudden, melody flows. It's
Uh,
amazing, you know, how all of a sudden everything makes sense. All the subtle substructures and everything else will work. This is maybe, let me see if I've got any more questions for you because it's kind of a segue into your own music. We've mentioned a large portfolio. I'm going to slow down here a little bit. We talked about the interest, Juilliard and so on. I asked you before we started taping what I mean, it's obvious, and what I hear is an interest, I think, and you're going to get me out of this hole if I'm in trouble yet, but a very interesting use of this idea of sequences, little figures that are vehicles for movement, harmonically, tonally, mood-wise, and so on. And it seems to be, unless I'm mistaken, throughout your work, this interest in sequential movement. Am I all wet? Straighten me out. You have the PhD. Help me out on this.
that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And it for me, it's a matter of clarity. I want I've always wanted my music to be accessible and musical ideas to be clear. And so there is some influence of minimalism, but the hardcore minimalists, Phil Glass, for example, that's never
This is not
appealed.
you. Yeah.
But clarity of expression has always been really important to me for many reasons, and I find that I can achieve clarity of my musical ideas, basically melodic phrases, melodies. It's possible to make them very clear using repetition and repetition at different pitch levels with different harmonies, which is to say sequences.
Yeah.
So
Good. I'm glad I got to, because the whole CD is full of sequences. All of this
yeah,
music is quite sequential, which, as you just finished saying, adds to clarity, adds to purpose, movement, intention, direction, all
yeah,
of those things. And by the way, you mentioned, or let me mention, um, here's what I find. We talked about accessibility, and your music is extremely accessible, I think, for the public. Very understandable, very clear, as you have said. And I guess let's talk about some of the pieces. I think it's time. The opening piece, "Awakening," at the beginning of the CD, and the end piece at the end of the CD is called "Reawakening." We'll discuss that. But "Awakening" for piano and orchestra. Um, it's a Thomas Hardy poem, which I'm afraid I have not read. I should have had the time to have a look. This is the National Symphony of Cuba playing. Um, Wonderful invocations. By the way, all of your pieces invoke. They begin like as a novel, if you will, invoking a mood, a presence, an idea, and then move, through their development. But I love the way you use delicate percussion instruments,
uh,
finger cymbals, chimes, like I have never heard chimes used in such a wonderful, collaborative, manner. So for example, with Awakening for piano and orchestra, it's not really a concerto, is it, for piano and orchestra, or am I wrong? It's kind of a collaborative work for piano and orchestra, yeah?
Yes, the piano is, although there are solo passages, the piano basically is part of the orchestral texture, and so I thought I did not want to call it a piano concerto because there are no virtuoso passages, no cadenzas,
Thankfully,
as as in
by
as
the
in a
way, which is very, very nice. Very, very nice. And this collaborative, this wonderful meshing of orchestra and piano together as collaborators. As you're part of even the percussive section of the orchestra, much more than that. But you are
yeah.
part of the ensemble as opposed to the back and forth and tag and carry the typical where the piano is the protagonist and the orchestra is the antagonist, that kind of thing. It's just a beautiful mesh. I love the way you use, as I mentioned, these delicate percussion instruments and chimes. It never occurred to me. It's a wonderful. And throughout, by the way, the CD, you use these delicate percussion instruments quite a lot, and they just kind of make things sparkle.
Mm.
In this piece, piano and orchestra, but also in the tone poems we're going to discuss in a moment. But I find your orchestration, in other words, quite interesting, very interesting, and beautifully organized. And of course, the movement and direction of the piece. Your pieces seem to begin always at a certain level, kind of a flat toned level, if you get my drift,
Uh,
and
yeah.
then move, of course, as pieces should, as novels should, into development and more texture, more interesting colors, and so on, and then reach their conclusion. But I'm glad we talked about this orchestral fabric that you create. It's in this particular piece, the, the colors and fabric get thicker and denser. It's quite descriptive, I think. The piece kind of ascends. Its tonality seems to ascend. Am I anywhere close?
Oh, absolutely.
No,
Right,
you're
right,
not. Don't
right.
you don't have to compliment me, but I'm just trying to describe what I heard. Beautiful exchanges between the piano and oboe, for example, or the piano and trumpet. These are there are these little duo moments that are quite wonderful, and then it kind of vaporizes
Mm.
this piece. What do you think? Now you're the composer. Tell me where I'm missing the boat, if at all, and my
No,
impression.
that exactly right, exactly right. So the piece opens with uh, cellos and basses and chimes, and
Very interesting.
uh, it's a fugato. It's a fugato, and then it builds from there, and it gradually transforms. The spirit of the music transforms, uh, and so the sense of awakening
Yeah, and
pervades.
it's amazing how tonality, how important tonality is, how various tonalities, go right to this brain center, so that people can be taken away on these journeys in terms of moving through various tonalities and colors and moods and so on. It's really wonderful. Now I want to talk about the two tone poems. Uh, and I need to know I mean, one is called The Loch Before Sunrise. Any heritage there, or did you have a visit to? I'm thinking of Loch in Scotland.
Yes, yes. Well, there's another loch, and that's in Rocky Mountain National Park, and it's called the Loch. And this, I was one of my hobbies, one of my passions is hiking in national parks, hiking in the mountains. And I got up very early one morning and hiked to this drop dead gorgeous lake with this fabulous scenery all around, fabulous mountain scenery all around, snow, and there you can see a glacier from the lot. But I got there. It was before sunrise, and so it was things were beginning to awaken. So it was just starting to get light, and and so I was just inspired to write a work descriptive of this just wonderful experience that I had there. And so at the very end of the work, the sun rises. And of course, the mountains, sometimes it takes a while for the sun to climb above the peaks. And when it does, it's just glorious. And so I really, you described it as a tone poem, and that's exactly how I think of
Very,
it as
very
a tone.
descriptive, yeah. I'm thinking, let me throw out a couple of things I took notes about while I was listening to the piece. Um, it hovers, it hovers, and then it moves a bit, making things begin to sweep a bit as the piece moves along. There begins to be some movement, as you can imagine the light rising, not yet to the not yet hitting the water. You can literally see this in your mind's eye. But it's very discreet, wonderful ascension feeling as the sun hits the water, glistening. And the miracle of music is that you can create sound that is glistening if you know what you're doing, which you do. It's wonderful. Um, Beautiful little cello tune. I love the idea of first time on this CD I'm hearing trombones in an action to change the tonality, to move the piece in certain directions. The piano becoming part of a big, more urgent thing as stuff, as you said, comes to life. Um, and again, you employ bells, chimes in subtle ways to create lovely, lovely colors. What else have I ever got? Beautiful piano horn duos scattered throughout, little moments, little sequence. I guess they're not sequence. They're little beautiful fragments of of of, um, of melody between these two and others. Little short phraselets, and then the sun hits the water, and
Yes,
it just the music just absolutely sparkles and then kind of settles down and does its full circle is my impression. um, Anything else to add about that one?
that pretty much describes the piece.
A- and by the way, did you take that, because I think of Rising Before Dawn with a great huge ugh. So did you make that journey to that loch deliberately with a piece in mind, or did the piece become inevitable?
The piece became inevitable. I had no intention of trying to write a descriptive tone poem of the loch at that particular moment, but when I got there, I, all these musical ideas
Hmm.
just flooding. Sometimes one has this feeling of being just a part of nature, and I had that feeling. And one also has the feeling sometimes. It's a wonderful line by T.S. Eliot. He talks about music heard so deeply that it is not heard at all, but you are the music while the music lasts. And I've had, of course, many times that experience where you just lose yourself completely in the music. You become the music. And so I was felt so much a part of nature, and combined that with this feeling of being at one with nature and at one with musical expression.
And then here's my dumb question for you. Did you then go out of your mind wondering how fast you could get back to civilization to start writing all this down? You know what I mean? If things are swirling in your head, how does that work for a composer? You know?
Uh, eh, well, I was cool about it. I was cool about it. I just wanted to enjoy I wanted to continue and to enjoy to enjoy the scene and this wonderful natural beauty and landscape. I really wanted to enjoy it, so I thought, I'll hold these ideas, these musical ideas in my head. They can wait. They can wait.
Oh, good. So the compositional itch didn't ruin the trip. You
No,
knew
no.
that they would still be there, maybe even more thoroughly worked out by the time you got home. And there's a second tone poem that also is has a certain fascination with waters. It's called A Mirror Upon the Waters. Nice use of is that crotales and other glittering little percussion instruments and colors in the introduction. That's what I love about the way you begin these pieces. They're always kind of magical. magical openings. They allow all kinds of mystery. And again, this piece sparkles in my view, and it's a piece about the light glinting off a rippling lake surface. Tell us about that. And by the way, were these two events these two pieces part and parcel of the same thing, or was it sometime later that Mirror Upon the Waters, or vice versa? And others, how did these two come about? Since they deal with kind of the same very naturalistic, beautiful
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, yeah, and they were written about the same time. They were written, one right after the other, one right after the other. So uh, there uh, there are certain themes
Mm.
that are shared in both pieces. And this was another tone poem, and it was about water. There's no specific inspiration for it, specific scene, as in the other work, but it was inspired by sunlight glinting on 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 the water. Uh,
And
and
by the way, we all know what that experience is. Every human being has had that experience, the almost blinding glinting on the
yes,
surface of a rippling body of water. It's magical always, every time we all humans experience it. It must be very atavistic. It must somehow go right to the dinosaur, the primitive brain or something,
yes,
and just
yes,
this
yes,
vast.
yes. But always magic for me. It's always magic for me
And once
when I
again,
see.
you move this tone poem, Mirror Upon the Waters, in sort of harmonic terraces. I guess is the way I was
Yes.
trying to explain it.
Uh,
You move with sequences and terracing of the harmonic movement and so on. Am
yeah.
I close? Am I getting there?
Yes,
Am I?
absolutely.
Don't shut me down if I get in trouble. Um, let's see. What else do I see? Just while I make a note to myself, it says these both these tone poems are beautifully accessible to listeners. It's very
Uh,
easy for a listener to lose themselves in this idea, especially with these kind of very graphic, very clear uh, titles. So these are two orchestral tone poems that need to be performed more for sure, and
uh,
I hope I'll be able to help a little bit. By the way, I forgot to mention in my preamble, our interview, everything's going to go up at performingartsreview.net. I'll follow with a review of the CD once I get all this stuff up there. Um, but this is what part of my duty as a fellow musician. I'm trying to get this really rather large audience. And by the way, people come to that site quite a lot these days, and they do tend to be college professors and musicians who are looking for repertoire. So I want them to pay attention. Here's one that I want you to speak to. It's very moving. Music for Haiti. It's for
yeah.
piccolo and strings, and with perfect intention in terms of the color and sound and effect that you want. We spoke about it before recording. Why don't you tell us before I mouth off about music for Haiti for piccolo and strings? Its circumstance, its colors, why you chose piccolo, and so on.
It was I was inspired to write it by the terrible earthquake that devastated Haiti, and Haiti to this day
Has not recovered. No.
has not recovered. And so I wanted I just really wanted to write a work evocative of the tragedy and the terrible sadness that the people of Haiti experienced. And so um, I've been very influenced by Latin American music. I have my two daughters are both adopted from Latin America, and so that's been a source of inspiration for many of my compositions. And the uh, panpipe flute from Latin America, originally from Peru, but it's pervaded Latin America now, and that wonderful, beautiful sound, the high pitched sound, and it's not dissimilar to the piccolo, and so I thought a very high. The piccolo is often used for. uh, for color and for its piercing, shrill sound. But I think it can also be very, it can be a very beautiful melodic instrument playing in this very high register above a carpet of strings, and so that's the work. That's the work. So the strings lay out a sonority and harmonies, and then the piccolo floats above that with a I think of it as a kind of a mournful melody there, and
Yeah,
it's pure melody. It's pure
it
melody.
is, Gordon. You took the words right out of my mouth. Also, I have written down here a lovely, lonely tune on
Lonely.
piccolo. But I was thinking of the instrument as playing in a lower register, where has that kind of pan open sound. You were describing that the writing is in a higher register. Am I
Yeah.
misunderstanding anything?
Uh, well, I'm using a wide range there of the piccolo, and sometimes it's in the very high register, but sometimes it's in the lower velvety register
Mm.
of the instrument.
And in fact, the tune almost sounds like a Bach tune. There's some kind of, I almost wonder whether you are hiding a secret in that tune. It's so lovely, it's so beautiful, and almost so familiar. Where did that come to you? Can you?
You're absolutely right. It's right out of the Baroque. It's right out of the Baroque. Vivaldi, Bach, slow movements from Vivaldi and Bach have inspired that sonority and the melodic line, the melodic development there.
That suddenly makes perfect sense to me in terms of understanding what I was hearing, and also, all the Vivaldi, I think, composed two or three piccolo concertos, something like that,
Yes,
all of which
yes,
have a slow movement. Anyway, it's just absolutely gorgeous. Again, for piccolo and strings, it's a piece that really needs to be performed. It's beautiful, beautiful. And let's see what else. The tune gets better and better. I say to myself, there are Haitian references, as we've discussed, this kind of pan flute sound, this timbre that's so wonderful, and also that it's just a very simple, even, quiet meditation on the event that took place, this horror that took place. It's a sorrowful piece, as of course it should be, uh, but it's not a lamentation. I don't know quite how to describe it. It's very comforting. It's wistful. What do you think? And then also, again, it kind of drifts off in a diminuendo, and floats away as
close.
these kind of thoughts would. What do you think?
That's exactly right. Exactly.
I'm not fishing for compliments, by the way. I never know whether I'm anywhere close, or whether I'm off on some crazy tangents. Okay, now next piece. Well, we'll just go through. How am I doing on time? We're getting a little tight. Very interesting. The next piece in the program, Remembrance of Things Past, and as you mentioned, I immediately thought of Proust, and it's not. It's referring to something else. You mentioned its structure as being a chaconne with repeating harmonic patterns. Um, Tell me a little bit about Remembrance of Things Past. That is here's the instrumentation. Percussion, of course. You use percussion so elegantly. Percussion, piano, oboe, and strings. It's a perfect little chamber piece. And in fact, I think this is with the Philadelphia Virtuoso Chamber
Very
Orchestra
good.
that made
Yes,
that.
yes.
Um, and let's see. Tell me a little bit about these. Let's talk about this piece as a chamber orchestra piece. Remembrance of Things Past. Where'd that come from? Where'd the idea come from? How'd you put that one together?
The title is it's from originally from a Shakespeare sonnet,
Legend.
and but I wasn't thinking of anything specific. I was thinking just in general of remembrance of things past, especially nostalgia, nostalgia, and perhaps bittersweet memories, but n- nothing specific like music for for Haiti.
Yeah.
not commemorating a specific event or referring to anything specific, but just a general sense of longing, sense of nostalgia and remembrance. And I was playing around with a harmonic progression with descending bass line that encouraged the change of harmonies. And then I would put a melody on top of that, and I believe for the beginning, it's just the piano and percussion, and then the cello melody, and then oboe comes in. And I was thinking, to give the work coherence and structure, what would happen if I just tried to repeat that same? Um, it's about 10 measures of harmonic progression. If I kept that consistent, um, in order to organize the piece and give coherence to the piece, and then um, melodies, various melodic lines above that harmonic framework, and so the piece. That's how the piece evolved. So I was thinking in terms of structure and coherence, and I do like that harmonic progression. so so I repeated it many times. So,
Sequencing and more sequencing with great intention, and moreover, we have referred to a baroque kind of, I don't know, kind of
yes, 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 another,
sentiment,
yeah,
and you just described a little earlier a figured bass, a walking bass. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
a kind of figured bass. You start with the bass line and then you add the tune
yes,
on
yes,
top. It's the typical structure of Baroque music. Am I okay there? I want to move
yes,
on to the cello sonata, which I think it's in two movements: lullaby, and the second movement, expectant soaring. It's for cello and piano. Lovely opening in piano and cello. Beautiful this sonata, and also nothing. Nothing bombastic. It's none of your writing is meant to display any particular virtuosic skills. It's really your music is meant to meld, I think, to meld and be collaborative. So in this case, again, sonata, the cello and piano are work quite collaboratively, of course, but this is a particular example of that. I found it lovely. I found it the first movement hopeful,
uh,
even in
mm,
again in how you manipulate tonality and how you move the mood of a listener. Um, both instruments are definitely in a conversation, are they not? Of course, yeah. Beautiful modulations. You're so good at lovely modulations to move from key area to key area. It's all so sensible and so intelligent. Tell me a little bit about that. And then the second movement, soaring. It's more stressed. That second movement, has a different feel altogether. Tonality is in minor tonalities and modes. Tell me about how this sonata for cello and piano came about in your head and on the paper.
the first movement, lullaby, was inspired by my daughters, and when they were small, I would sing them lullabies, even though my voice is pretty terrible, but I would sing to them as they were falling asleep, and I've always been enchanted by lullabies, and so this was written for them, and trying to evoke the spirit of a lullaby, the uh, gently rocking uh, spirit of a lullaby. And I then I but definitely wanted to introduce some contrast in the sonata. So the second movement is in two parts, and the first part um, is there's tension, and then that gives way to a uh, what I call soaring. My description to the performers is soaring, and it's um, a very uh, a very uh, uh, for me it was a very moving experience writing the second part of this, where the cello becomes more active and more melodic. The first section of the second movement, short motives. Second section, long melodic lines, and I've always been partial to long melodic lines, and that's something that one doesn't find so much in contemporary music. And so, for better or for worse, I'm very fond of melody and long soaring
Yeah. Well,
melodic
I
parts.
can assure you it works very well indeed in the second movement, and that this sonata for cello and piano is really very much worth playing. And by the way, there's a lovely little pizzicato section. Again, about the way you use colors and contrasts and things. This is the second movement, this little pizz section that I wasn't expecting, and it worked beautifully. Uh, uh, um, it's just a lovely piece, and again, very accessible for the public. I'm running out of time. I'm going to have to move on to the last piece. By the way, I think I mentioned earlier, you are the pianist throughout this CD. There's a lot of piano music throughout in the CD, and it's always wonderful to have the composer as the pianist. So, I mean, in a way, the CD is a treat. Not only is it legacy, because presumably they're being performed the way you want them to be performed. But we get a very clear idea of your expertise as a professional pianist. I mean, it's clear as a bell the training you've had and so on. Reawakening for piano solo. Did that was that part was reawakening a part of, well, let's see, how shall I finish this, let me compose this reawakening, or did it exist? What, tell me how reawakening came
The
about.
the first, the former. I thought I need to um, bring the CD to a close and bring this cycle to of awakening and reawakening to a close. And so I'll do it with reawakening. And this goes back to the Thomas Hardy poem. The Thomas Hardy poem is a beautiful, beautiful, powerful poem.
I
Part of
never
it is
thought of him as a poet. You know what I mean? I think of him as an author, a novelist. So
uh,
I'll definitely have a
same
look.
here. But in reading about him, I've read that in England he's known equally as a poet. His poetry is as widely read as his novels, and it's a dark poem, but it's very, very expressive. And so there is darkness in the piano reawakening, the final work on the CD. And I try to evoke elements of the poem, but it has a happy ending. It has a happy ending, and things uh, for me, the ending signifies rebirth. Rebirth.
As in happy, happy. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
we're not to be too silly, make too silly a point, but I'm glad I asked that question about whether you reached a point and you thought, well, now how do I make this CD make a beautiful arc? And you said, if I understand you correctly, I'll compose a piece. We'll call it Reawakening, to bring this whole thing full circle. Uh, Beautiful, wonderful, intentional, um, an example of how composers operate, how they think, how they play, how they interpret. This is what this wonderful CD Awakening is about. It's a treat for those of us in the profession, but for just listeners, to have this opportunity to hear your mind at work, and to, I mean, literally hear your mind at work, because you're in charge from beginning to end. You are a presence there at the piano throughout most of the CD. I think that all by itself makes this CD. It's a Novona Records release from 2017. I'm going to wind it down now. Awakening for piano and all the pieces we've just discussed. Do you have anything? Do you have any last thoughts about this CD, or what's going on? In your life these days. What's happening?
I'm at work on another CD, and it's quite different. Uh, it's called Dreamers, and it's paying homage to uh, the experiences, the emotional experiences of the undocumented people in the U.S. and their struggles and their emotion. And I've interviewed several people, and I'm interested in their emotional states, what they're going through. And it's not all bad, but it's homage to the dreamers. And there is the first piece is an orchestral work. It's subtitled my fifth symphony. Is my fifth symphony, and that will be recorded next month. And then the rest of the CD has similar themes, works, chamber works with similar themes.
And
So
let me just jump in to say, I really, I guess what I'm trying to say is that composers are, of necessity, good composers, engaged in the history of their time. I'm thinking of Beethoven. This man was not unengaged. He was engaged in the active history of the Napoleonic Wars, of everything else going on in
yeah,
his time. So when I hear otherwise, like, oh, no, no, I can't be bothered by all that politics and all that stuff. I'm in my dream world writing my own music. It's fine and dandy, but I think real composition and real composers are people who are engaged in the here and now. Be here now. Ram Dass's admonition, which transformed my life. Be here now in the here and now. So it's thrilling to hear that your next CD is involved in this very pertinent issue. That's really something. Can't wait. And when you get ready to throw the info at me, and I'll throw this up on your page. We've got to end it. We're running over quite a bit. Jeffrey Jacob, pianist, composer, educator. The CD out on Navona, which has the most elegant presentation. I'll put all of that up. The way to buy the CD and the program notes, all of that for Awakening will be up at performingartsreview.net. I'll get that up, and I hope in the next couple 3 days. I'll follow with my. You've heard some of my notes, a little, 4 paragraph kind of review of the CD. I hope I'll be able to find some words you'll be able to use. Um, what a great pleasure meeting you. It's we've been at it for a while here with various shutdowns and internet problems, but a great pleasure, Jeff. Now I know you're close by. You're in Sacramento. Somehow I have envisioned you in the cold dark of the winter elsewhere. Um, Jeffrey, Jacob, many thanks for giving me some of your time this afternoon. It's always wonderful to hear from living composers and have them describe what we all get a chance to listen to. We don't have to go through the blood and the sweat and the agony and the rewrites and all the rest of it. We get to enjoy the finished product, but it's so wonderful to hear your explanations as well. Many thanks. I think
thank
we're done.
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Great pleasure. We'll see you. Bye bye.
Okay, bye bye.